Welcome to the College Football Debrief on the CFB on OSG with your host, the Online Sports Guys.
And from the college football capital of the world, Atlanta, GA, it's College Football Debrief. Thanks for the introduction, Tommy Palmer. John Wilkerson here. Over there's John Nelson.
Check.
Anthony Goldman decided to take a vacation this week.
Loser.
We hope to hear from him soon.
Whenever he decides to return from vacation.
Exactly. And John, we want to celebrate the beginning of the talking season in college football.
We're talking.
The non-playing season has I guess come to an end as the BYU Cougars decided to get a big jump start on the talking season and held their media day on Tuesday. And a lot of the talk has been about what else? Media rights. And their media rights with ESPN is up after this season. They're looking to renew and to get an update. And on his state of the program, athletic director Tom Holmoe, well, he updated the status of the contract with ESPN.
The first contract that we did that we're just ending now, we had individually named games, right, bowl games for every year. It looks like this time around, it might be maybe we have some primary games that will be known, but there's some nuances is that we could try to get out of maybe some of those primaries if we have an opportunity to get into a secondary bowl. Right now you have the P5 schools, which might have a Big Ten 7 against SEC 6. And if they can't fill those games, it might be a big bowl, which ESPN would try to place us in. So contractually, ESPN working with all those bowls and all those conferences and BYU, trying to, like I said before, make sure they take care of everybody in the ESPN family. Our minimum goal is maybe bowl eligible, but I think Kalani and his staff and his team has higher aspirations than to just be bowl eligible.
And that sound courtesy of BYU TV. So, John, as you know, when you're an independent program, the lifeblood of your financial lifeblood, I guess, would be having your media rights sold. We see it with NBC and Notre Dame. That marriage has gone on for almost 20 years now. And now the marriage between ESPN and BYU. The big holdup, as Tom indicated, was the bowl and how the bowls will shake down for BYU.
And obviously, when you're looking at the independent, all of the conferences have their tie-ins. And the tie-ins have their conferences, and they have their own little reindeer game. And unless you're somebody like an almost Notre Dame or any one of that shrinking list of independents, you've got to find a dance partner. And in this day and age, honestly, if you're looking for a dance partner and you're an independent, I think that your first dance partner, at least your first dance, is probably with ESPN. Correct. And with the number of bowl games that are out there now and the number of bowl games that are being added, you could have BYU appearing in a Pacific time zone bowl where things have been orchestrated and changed, and you're in the ninth bowl game in Dallas, Texas in any given calendar year. So if you're not in a conference tied to a bowl, then tie yourself to the network that is in charge of putting on the show itself. So I'm trying to think of a TV analogy. If you're an actor and you don't have an agent, or make sure that you're tied to the network that you really want to be on when it comes to a show. Like if you want to be an actor on the Hallmark Movie Channel, if you know the writer to the movie, then maybe that gets you in to act in one of the Hallmark movie classics.
Well, I think one of the sticking points that was mentioned was, if a lower tier Big Ten and a lower tier SEC school cannot fulfill their bowl requirement, BYU wants to be able to slide in and not be tied to one bowl. I think that's one of the sticking points. What comes to mind to me as this has become an issue with BYU and finding that, trying to hammer out a deal with ESPN. I think back 35 years ago when this program won a national championship in 1984, and this program, I guess they're the independent of the group of five, and they really don't have a hope of winning a national championship. We'll go over their schedule a little later, which is a very ambitious one. But if you're going to be in that group of 5, which I think BYU has now been assigned to, I guess is the best way to put it, they really don't have a chance to repeat what they did in '84.
So I guess would that make you the +1 at the dance? If you're not in the group of 5 and if you're not a Go 5 and you're not a Power 5, you're the +1 that somebody is bringing that didn't go to that high school, right? You're like to the neighboring high school or the private school that didn't have the dance, and you've got to come up with a date, and so you end up with this particular individual that goes to the other school just outside your area.
I just think they're sacked with an albatross right at the beginning and really no way of digging out of that hole.
No doubt. And that to me is when you decide that you're going to go the route of the independent. That to me in this day and age with all of the mega money contracts that are tied to 4-letter and 3-letter words, if you're outside that, you've got to find a way to come in the side door. And I think that while Tom Holmoe admits that they're in a good spot and at the tail end of negotiations, until those I's are crossed and T's are dotted, all right, if you're the number 7 team from the Big Ten and the number 6 from the SEC and you can't fill a slot, then, hey, how about us? I don't know if that's a real comfortable position to be in these days if you're any school in any conference. And I know that a lot of Go 5s would love to be able to fill those spots, but now BYU, who has had their time in the past, is trying to figure out a way to come back in the door and be a part of the discussion. And I think that really this is the way to do it.
Meanwhile, John, you know as well as I do, BYU has one of the great fan bases out west in college football.
And it's always fun to see how they kind of wrap themselves around what they do on a yearly basis. So, and I would call this a must-see. If you can take the time, go catch a home game, because you'll see how special this environment really can be sometimes.
And if you and I have decided we're going to take a weekend trip to Provo and catch the Cougars, well, you and I will go to one stop on the internet, and that is cgiant.com. Because there, because there you can find BYU tickets. And if you type in SDH on your checkout, it helps you, and it's going to help us. So, John, where are you going to go when you're going to purchase your BYU tickets?
Go to SeatGiant.com, use the code SDH, and frankly, use that and for any kind of a ticket. And it's not just for sporting events. You can figure out any kind of an event, and it can be a concert, it can be anything about that. But go to SeatGiant.com, use the code SDH at checkout. Helps us out, helps you out with a bit of a discount. So it doesn't have to be sports. It can be a whole bunch of other things as well. So use SDH at checkout.
And we'll talk more BYU when we come back.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Rock at the What's Up Falcons podcast, and I'm joined with my boys. My boys in the house. Where you at?
Yeah. What up?
LG, and we have Q, and we have Hoop in the house.
Q's here, the most beloved guy in all of sports entertainment.
Indeed. Hey, y'all, we want to thank everyone for listening to us, and if you want to listen to some great Falcons information, check us out on the What's Up Falcons podcast. Right, fellas?
Right. Sure. Hey, we here every week, baby.
We keeping it real, so check us out. I'm there on Twitter. Holla. Peace.
Subscribe to the What's Up Falcons podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Listen to the What's Up Falcons podcast at whatsupfalcons.com.
The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. All you got to do, install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, lacrosse. Maybe I can get John to do a CFL podcast. What are you waiting for? Let's get this done. Get the OSG Sports app today.
Time to talk BYU football. The Cougars held their annual media day today, and much of the talk was about quarterback Zach Wilson, who after finishing a freshman season with a perfect Potato Bowl, had shoulder surgery, but he should be 100% when training camp opens.
How many times a day do you get asked about your shoulder?
Probably like 15 times a day.
So how's your shoulder?
Shoot, it's doing well.
Oh, okay, that's number 16. Right?
Yeah. They should have no concern. You know, I don't know if I'm really supposed to even talk on this or not. Nobody said anything, but my guy is fine.
Coming off that incredible 18 for 18 performance in the bowl game, Wilson's confidence will only grow this offseason, knowing he's going in as the unquestioned starter.
It gives us certainly more direction, knowing that he's going to be the guy, and I think it gives the team some stability and confidence as well.
Well, I think he's feeling a lot more comfortable, especially with the offense. It was new last year, and I think he's a lot more comfortable with it now. We knew last year when he got here that we had something special.
You know, being a freshman quarterback playing and just going through the motions and going through the system, and now I should have that stage down. I should be moving to the next and increasing my mental ability and being able to, you know, maybe read defense a little bit faster and make checks.
Wilson doesn't just check plays, he's also got to check that perfect hair.
He's so annoying about his hair. He has to have gel in his hair. He's always touching A's like this. We'll run a rep of, you know, sprint or something, and afterwards Zach's like fixing his hair. I'm like, bro, like there's nobody out here. It's just us.
How much gel do you think he goes through?
He might go through a couple bottles a week. Yeah, that's probably about right. I try and approach my hair like the game as well. So hopefully those two go hand in hand.
That's Dana Green from KTVX TV, the ABC affiliate in Salt Lake, giving you the rundown on BYU Media Day, which was Tuesday, and you heard sound from Zach Wilson and wide receiver Micah Simon, and the other wide receiver Leva Hifo, and offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes, and Kalani Sataki, the head coach.
Kalani Sataki.
Yes, and I love how that package ended with talking about Zach Wilson's perfect hair. He was perfect in the Potato Bowl, and apparently the coif is, well, it is impressive.
Okay, so all right, let's think about quality coiffs here. Do we consider Mike Gundy to have a quality coif?
Oh, Zach Wilson is up there with Mike Gundy. Now, Gundy made famous, obviously, the mullet, the Kentucky waterfall. Zach Wilson has got that perfect West Coast hair, properly gelled, and I'm sure the co-eds at BYU are impressed.
I was going to suggest Cliff Kingsbury, but since he is in the professional ranks, I don't know if that is a legitimate.
Now.
I was going to say that's a professional comparison. John Parker Wilson from years past.
Yeah, he could play. Yeah, he could play, but you know he's late 30s now, early 40s.
I'm going in the context of the time.
Okay.
So
I gotcha.
John Parker Wilson at the time. Mike Gundy in present day with his Yarmir Yager impression. Look it up, kids, on the Google machine. Let's see. So who else would have the quality, perfectly placed hair these days, or even in years past in the time when we've covered individuals? So
we should speak. We're both follically challenged.
Well, yes. I just call it a high crown and then put it there.
Well, going back to Zach Wilson, I mean, as a freshman last year, this guy, Wilson, made quite an impression at BYU, and obviously the perfect 18 for 18 in the Potato Bowl kind of capped off a spectacular season, and much is expected from him this season. He's coming off shoulder surgery. He addressed that courtesy of BYU TV.
It's super weak. That was the biggest problem, is like lifting wise. It's hard. It's not near, like my right arm's a lot stronger than my left one is already. It just sucks as far as recovery goes. I can't push myself upper body wise just because of my left arm now. Yeah, so I already started taking reps and PRPs and stuff. I'm just trying to, get in there, get a flow for the offense, and, get back there and get used to just taking the reps again and what it's like to command the offense. And, even if I can't chuck it way down the field, I'm still throwing all the short stuff and getting my footwork right, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm just trying to take part and help be a leader and push these guys along.
Of course, when you're talking BYU, you're always talking quarterbacks. I mean, they've had some great ones in the past, Zach Wilson looks like he's going to be. He's he's more the modern quarterback than the Jim McMahon's. Well, I would if you're going to compare him, maybe Steve Young back in the '80s. Maybe there's some similarities there.
Yeah, and I was going to go back to, you mentioned Steve Young, then you get into McMahon, Mark Wilson, Gifford Nielsen, Robbie Bosco, I think, for a part of that. And I'm trying to remember who the first one in the run was for Lavelle Edwards. Gary Scheide, I think, is the one that came to mind for me there. But for the longest time, this was quarterback you. And I think that, if you can have that power running game to go with a quarterback that can do some serious work for you, then I think that BYU is the BYU that we know and have seen over a great period of time, especially under Lavelle Edwards.
Now, last season, they started off with an impressive win in Tucson, and then a couple weeks later had an impressive win at Madison against the Wisconsin Badgers that really kind of put them back on the map and put the Cougars back into the AP poll. And then it kind of got mediocre after that. And it really was the Western Michigan win in the Potato Bowl that kind of generates some momentum for them for the Cougars heading into 2019.
But when you start your season, now let me ask you this. When you start your season with your rivalry game, are you for that kind of thing or against it? Because when you go to 10:15 Eastern time on August 29th and it's Holy War, I mean, do you want something like that out of the blocks, or do you want that later on in the year? That's my question.
I think I would like to do it right out of the blocks because you can focus in on something during fall camp rather than, let's say, a McNeese State is your opener, a FCS school or a bottom level group of 5 school. I would think you'd want to just to get off the season, and that's the way college football is now. They're playing those big intersectional type games that have some kind of meaning right off the bat. And this does for BYU. It's the Holy War. This is the rivalry, and I kind of like it being played right. It's kind of like their Daytona 500.
Yeah.
NASCAR does their thing right. Their signature, their big trophy right at the beginning. This kind of has that feel, to use a NASCAR reference. So I would want to play my big in-state rival right off the bat. Just think how focused those guys are going to be in fall camp.
All right, so then you're focused in fall camp, and then your schedule goes Tennessee. You come up with a Jeremy Pruitt side that is really chomping at the bit to try to turn things around in the next year of that administration.
Well, let me stop you there because
you're going to stop
the first 4 games of BYU's schedule is extremely ambitious.
No doubt.
We mentioned the Holy War. You mentioned going to Neyland to take on the Vols. Then you host Southern Cal and Washington back-to-back from the Pac-12, which really I would think the pressure is on both USC and Washington to prevail in this game in Provo because of all the bad PR the Pac-12's been getting, especially on the football end. So realistically, even at 2-2, you got to like BYU's chances of having a real successful season, but you kind of think 3-1 is attainable.
Okay, yeah, all right. So you put the Holy War over in the drawer. Tennessee, if you jump on them early, I think that's when you get them. USC down. Washington, that might be the one. So I could see them. Honestly, I'm looking at more of a 2-2 in that first 4, and then getting into the other parts of their schedule where they could really get something done. So, all right, since we've done the first 4, you look at the next 4. We'll just take it in groups of 4, I guess. And then you've got Toledo, South Florida, Boise, and Utah State.
First of all, why are they playing in Toledo?
Straight cash, homie.
Good luck with that one. South Florida, to me, is the game that I'm kind of penciling in as probably a loss. what's it going to be on October 12th in Tampa? It's going to be extremely humid still. And Charlie Strong has got a very good team coming back to Tampa. And then that Boise game is going to be an interesting one for me. Of course, last year the Broncos took care of BYU in a close one in Boise on the Smurf turf. And then after that, it's another rivalry game with Utah State in Logan. So that stretch right there with South Florida, Boise, and Utah, to me, is going to really be the telltale sign of the season, whether it's a bowl season or maybe 6 wins.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it right now as maybe 3-5, 4-4 after that next batch, and then, then you're looking at Liberty and Idaho State, and you're kind of going, all right, okay, so be it. And then so that's where you get your wins there to wrap things up.
And then they close the season, BYU does, at UMass in Amherst. I'm sure it's going to be nice and brisk in Amherst that day.
Yeah.
And San Diego State to close out the season November 30th. So 8-4 is possible.
Yeah. And, I'm kind of going, it's there. And I want to see what they do after game 8. I want to see what they do turning the corner. So that for me is what I want to see from BYU, and then I want to see how they're integrated into their new dance with their new dance partner. That's what I'm looking forward to the most.
So we kind of went over the schedule and some other things about BYU. We'll have some final thoughts when we come back.
Want tickets to the big game? Go to SeatGiant.com. Use the code SDH at checkout. It helps you and it helps us. That's SeatGiant.com.
The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Get the OSG Sports app today. We've been talking BYU football as the Cougars got the head start in the race for the host media day. They had their own on Tuesday. John Nelson and I have just been kicking back our thoughts of BYU football this year. Last year they finished 7-6. They had that 48-18 win over Western Michigan in the Potato Bowl in Boise. And this year they start off against Utah in the Holy War. So what are your final thoughts on BYU this year, John?
I want to see how this relationship with ESPN, once it's finalized, I want to see what it means. And then I want to see if BYU becomes that centralized location that it has been in the past in the Mountain Time Zone for talent. We've seen it be a place where talent can really sit there and wave its hand in the air and go, don't ignore BYU because they'll come up and bite you. Is this the first step in them turning that corner and getting back on the road that we're used to seeing BYU in? So for me, that's what I'm looking for, and I want to see if this is the first step in that direction.
What I'll be looking for is whether Zach Wilson's going to have to do it all himself. He needs some help. He can't do it all, but he's one of these modern quarterbacks that has the green light every time, and he's very talented. He just cannot take the amount of punishment he took last year. So that's going to be the goal. I thought this was a real interesting stat, John, about BYU last year. When they ran over 100 yards last year, they went 7-1. When they didn't, they went 0-5. So this team, if they can get over the century mark, the thing is, Zach Wilson can't be that one focused guy that gets him that way. He's got to have some help.
Yeah. So what's the phrase in the SEC? Run the damn ball. So
yes.
I think that run the damn ball, Bobo, is going to be what you're going to be looking at for BYU to see their success. And taking that stat and using it as your major indicator, I think that that's going to be the way to let it ride. So if you're not going to be looking at BYU on a weekly basis, although that you will have folks from other conferences kind of taking a peek the week before and the week after, look at that rushing stat and look at the number of times that a quarterback is put on his butt. Because if the quarterback's not upright and you're not getting the running game going, then I think that's when you see problems for BYU. So those to me would be the two things to pay attention to on a weekly basis.
And they have one of the most physical defenses in college football, in my opinion. And they'll get after you, and they will smack you in the mouth, and they will hit you hard.
What you said.
All right. So all things BYU.
All things
Good
BYU.
discussion, John. Good
Yeah.
discussion, John.
Good to be back discussing, actually.
Exactly. So the plan is, before we start doing our previews, we want to talk about college football programs that have hit some hard times, but looking to rebound. And I've got 3 in mind, and we'll start those discussions next week. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me. Is Anthony going to be back from vacation, or are we going to continue to heckle him?
I think, well, we always heckle him, but
True.
I'm sure he'll be back from vacation.
Okay.
So look out for all of our other podcasts out there. John, take it away. Tell us what we got.
Okay, well, first off, go to SeatGiant.com for all your ticketing needs. Use the code SDH at checkout, and it helps out the show. It helps you out. It helps us out, and so it's a win-win. All right, let's see. On the soccer side, download the Soccer Down Here app, Soccer Down Here Daily Radio, 9 a.m. to 11 Eastern Time on Spreaker and a bunch of other platforms, like 4 dozen of them. And don't forget to download the Soccer Down Here app, available iOS and Android, much like on this side of the department store. Don't forget to download the OSG Sports app as well for all of our college football and all of our wrestling and all the other content that's not soccer related. It's over in this part of the store, and you can get it for free at iOS and Android. The OSG Sports app for college football and the Soccer Down Here app for soccer. I know that's really strange. Go to theonlinesportsguys.com for all the news that Brother Phil feels is fit to print on a daily basis. So when he vents his spleen, that's where it is. SoccerDownHere.net for everything on that side of the department store as well. And there's one of our listeners has decided on the Soccer Down Here side of things to sit there and fix MLS. It's an opus. Trust me, it's going to take a while. So follow on Twitter. Follow on Facebook at OSG Sports, at Soccer Down Here. We don't have Instagram yet, but OSG Sports on Facebook, OSG Sports on Twitter, at JWilkerson16, at OSG Nelson, at OSG Phil, at OSG Sports, at AP_Goldman85, and at OSG JDub. I think that's everybody.
I think you got it all covered.
Yeah, I hope.
All right. That's going to do it for this show on the College Football Debrief. For John Nelson, I'm John Wilkerson. So long, everyone.